Welcome to Let's Chat with Julie Lewin in the Trauma Talk series, where together we'll navigate the depths of the impact trauma has on our lives and collective well-being, shining a light on resilience, healing, and the transformative power of doing the inner work. I'm your host, Julie Lewin. Thank you for joining us. Welcome back to another episode of Let's Chat with Julie Lewin. And today I have a very special guest, Mitch Webb. And I am so excited to dive into what you have done to overcome your trauma, your health challenges, and live a vital, healthy, thriving life. So why don't I introduce you first, and then we will get stuck in. So Mitch was once a corporate stress executive and discovered his passion for wellness after many health challenges, including Lyme disease, 2 traumatic brain injuries, long COVID, weight loss resistance, mould toxicity, and the mental health impacts of all of that. After visiting multiple doctors, and I can totally relate to that, and not getting any answers, Mitch dove into the research, found a specific lifestyle that allowed him to heal himself and get back his life. And he fought back and is way better now, many times over than ever. And that led Mitch to become a personal health coach for men, and he's been doing that since 2016. And I can't wait to dive in and see what we are going to uncover. So Mitch, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit, and then we'll have a conversation, because that's the way I like to roll.
Right on. I appreciate the introduction, and I'm happy to be here on the show. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
I'm here in Raleigh, North Carolina. Like you said, I'm a health coach. I've been doing that for 6 years. I provide the service that I wish that I had when I was going through all the health challenges that you mentioned. And it's a labor of love. I'm constantly learning, and like yourself, I love helping people.
Yeah, absolutely. So what I like to dive into is not so much what you outsourced, and it sounds like you had trouble even finding anyone to help you. I want to talk about the inner journey, how you insourced your healing. Like, what went on in your brain that drove you to do your own research and find your own way? Because some people don't do that. What drove you, or what motivated you to start doing that research? Because like mold toxicity, that's enough on its own. Long COVID, that's enough on its own. What was the other one?
Heavy metals,
Lyme
disease.
For heaven's sake.
Yeah.
So like that's a lot for your immune system to deal with. How did you heal your immune system is really what I want to know.
Well, I guess that started from being an athlete growing up and seeing that, and I've never even thought about that until you asked me. It's a great question. Being an athlete growing up and learning and watching the body change if I put the work in.
Yeah.
And so I went from being 140 pounds my freshman year in high school to being 210 pounds by the time I was a senior, because I wanted to play a certain position on the football team.
Right.
And I was getting pushed around in practice, and I remember coming home and putting a bunch of weight gainer protein powder is what we called it back in the day, and just seeing that change, seeing that I could gain 70 pounds over 3 years. And when I got
what position do you play in football to have to be that big?
I was playing defensive line.
Right. And that's where you come down.
Yeah, most of the guys that I was playing against were almost 100 pounds more than I was at some point in some games. And I tended to draw the biggest guy on the team to go against.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, 140 pounds wasn't going to cut it. And so, every opportunity I had, I was lifting, I was eating, and gosh, if I could go back now and apply what I mean, I was looking at internet forums and talking to coaches, and I had coaches myself. I had a mentor who was a power lifter,
Oh, wow.
and he was probably 60, 70 years old. And yeah, I mean, I saw that I put the work in and things changed, and I, experienced those results on the football field. And so when I started, I had a TBI, developed autoimmune disease, moved into
Hang
a
on.
house that
What's a TBI?
had traumatic brain injury.
Oh, was that from football?
I had a lot of those in football as well, I'm sure, and those growing up as well. But I've had two TBIs that are documented, after sports and childhood, that kind of thing. And one was I fell out of a second story window when I was in Germany, studying abroad in college, drinking, watching the World Cup, being silly.
Goodness, Mitch.
And then 5 years ago, I got hit by a dump truck, and it totaled my car and left me with post-concussion syndrome for about a year
Oh,
before I got the long haul COVID 3 times in a row.
3.
3 times.
Oh my goodness. You know what? I've not ever had COVID.
Really? For me, the COVID wasn't the problem. That was easy to get over. That lasted like the first time it kicked my butt. It was like a week or two. I remember that. But it's like afterwards, the second time I had it for 3 days. It was like a cold. But afterwards, I couldn't get out of bed. So I had chronic fatigue.
Yeah.
My hormones were wrecked. Gut was really off. And now looking back, I would say that's because I had all this unresolved trauma that left my nervous system extremely dysregulated.
Yeah.
And now, having done this work for a year and a half, and I've got a long ways to go. I've made a lot of progress, and I'm so grateful for that. I think I was in a freeze state. You do fight, flight, and freeze, because now, as I heal my nervous system, I'm more aware of the days when I have what I would call fatigue or low energy. My digestion may be off, and it tends to be, my body did that for so long. That's the only thing it knew, was to go into freeze. And so I think that was the root of a lot of the illness and things that I attracted over the years, or I dealt with over the years.
Yeah. So look, I haven't had COVID, so I don't know what that experience is, but talking to people, what they experience can be so varied to another member of the same household. And my intuition is that COVID goes to the weakest spots in your body, or it goes to the part of your body that has had injury before. And there's some sort of damage or scarring, or it's not as healthy as other parts of your body. And so
my wife has never had it. I've had it 3 times.
That's wild. Hey.
Yeah.
So my husband and I have not had it. We've only been sick once in the last 5 years. And that I got tested for COVID, but they said no, I didn't have COVID, I didn't have influenza. I don't know what I had, but yeah.
Well, since then I've had, and the last time I had it was right a couple months after that is when I started healing my nervous system on that journey. And since then, I think I've had a cold once, and that cold was more around processing a big trauma. My brother, who took his life maybe 10 years ago, I processed that for the first time a couple months ago, and when that happened is when I got sick.
Yeah.
And since but I haven't
Absolutely.
had that since. Yeah, my body, my nervous, everything was just kind of overwhelmed when that started coming out. But
Exactly.
it was a beautiful process. I've just come to find that that's kind of normal when we release these boulders
Hmm.
of stored survival stress.
Yeah. So what are you doing to help your nervous system? What have you discovered something magical, or are you following a method?
So I've kind of come up with my own little process. I don't think
Yeah.
it's unique or anything like that, but it's unique to me. And um, I started going to therapy.
Mhm.
My therapist does EMDR with me.
Yeah.
Um, we've kind of held off on that for right now until I'm more regulated, because that can kind of open up things too much.
Right.
So right now, my big focus is building capacity in the nervous system,
Hmm.
and growing regulation. And but the thing that really helped me is Irene Lyon. She's in Canada, and you can find her online.
How do
And
you
she
spell
has
that?
a
I,
IRENE and then LYON, and IreneLyon.com.
okay.
And she has
I'll check.
definitely, and she has two programs: a 21-day nervous system reset, and it's called Smart Body, Smart Mind.
Mm,
And what she's done is taken from a lot of great teachers. You've got polyvagal theory in there,
yeah.
you've got somatic experiencing through Feldenkrais method.
Yeah.
You've got, gosh, what else? I'm kind of blanking on some of the other things, but
That's a
like I've done through my journey, she takes from all the greats, and what she's done is provided an at-home follow along course that you can do with a community.
Mhm.
And once you get access to these courses, you can do them as much as you want. And I actually just applied and got a mentorship from her, and that'll be starting in September. So I just found out about that today, so I'm really
That's
excited.
fantastic.
Yeah,
Very
and
good.
that so for me, being someone who's been on this journey, to just go to therapy and talk about that,
Mm,
um, I needed some kind of map. I needed something to work off of, and
yeah.
I have complex PTSD and trauma, and so there's a lot there.
Yeah.
And her course was amazing because what it did is I mean, here's the thing: when we have trauma, it's easy to not have a lot of memories
Exactly.
from childhood, right? And that's
Exactly.
me.
Yeah.
And
Same.
so her course, it unlocked a lot of that stuff, and she's real big on education. So you're learning about the physiology and the biology of stress. You're learning about, the vagus nerve and all the branches of the nervous system and how the body works. And so what it looks like to have various forms of trauma, which, here I've got all of them. And,
Yeah.
and like, there was times when I would be listening to the course and I would just have massive emotions coming out. I remember, I mean, this still happens. Today
Mm,
it happened. I was walking around the neighborhood listening to stuff, and it just and things just erupt, like big tears. And so what I learned to do to attune to my own needs, I pause, and then I try to process that emotion. I
mm,
may do that through tapping. Tapping is usually really good. Now I've gotten to where I can identify the emotion and work with it. At the time, I didn't know how to feel. I didn't know how to interpret. I didn't know how to
mm,
process anything that was coming up. It was just really overwhelming.
mm.
And so I would try to figure out what's the emotion, where's that coming from, and I may journal to get that to work on
Mm.
that, and then I would show up at therapy and say, hey, here's the 4 or 5 things that I've been working on. Let's work on that together.
I think that right there is the way to do therapy. And I don't know that everyone does therapy like that.
I
Like
don't think so either.
when we work with, like I work with my daughter Tash, when we work with our clients, we say to them, don't come to our coaching session telling us all the good things. We want to
Yeah.
know what you struggled with since our
Mhm.
last session.
Mhm.
So write down all the things that actually created a charge in your body,
Mm-hmm.
and bring that to us. Bring us the ugly. Bring us the breakdown, and then we'll go in and pull the threads on that, and we will decode that together.
Oh yeah.
And that's how our clients have been able to get the breakthroughs so quickly, because of that. So I would say you're right on track as far as the way that I work with people. And I think that's awesome that you do that.
And through the course, like I found that, so my nervous system, people are either, when they come to the course, Irene always says, they're either feeling too much, they're not feeling anything at all. And so they're either in freeze or they're in, hypervigilance. So I was more learning. I had no idea I was in freeze, but I was kind of in a freeze and hypervigilance. And so the way she describes that is like having the gas and the brakes on all the time.
At the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the thing that I've observed about freeze is that people around you see that that's an acceptance or a compliance or an agreement of what's going on in your environment, where actually inside you're going, I don't even know what to do here.
Well, I think so many people like myself are completely unaware that they're in that state or what they're feeling, because we've shut that down. Like it's too intense to be in our bodies, in our environment. And so our coping mechanism is to shut it down until that doesn't work anymore. And underneath that freeze is a lot of sympathetic activation too.
Yeah.
And I have to add this, the thing that has helped me the most, I would say, is the somatic work. So getting into the body. And what I found through her course is this somatic experiencing one-on-one work, which is a lot of what we're doing with the at-home stuff, but working with someone one-on-one.
Yeah.
And so I have my therapist that we talk, and we do that once a week, and she's helping me process and work through all this homework that I've always got. I mean, I love it. So anything that I do, I jump in, and I would say going too fast with this work can kick your ass too.
I'm so glad that you said that, Mitch. I'm so glad, because it can't be done fast for the full benefit.
Well, you'll know if you try to have this big cathartic release, which shaking, like our society, that's kind of what I knew about trauma. I mean, I had a book on trauma releasing exercises. Even things like breath work or they can be too much for people if you're not ready to handle it, if you're not ready to be with the intensity of that feeling, because it's the thing that you've been scared of the most.
Yeah.
And so we have to learn. That's why she's big on information, and we have to learn about that and be ready for that, so that when it comes, we don't, avoid it or shy away from it. The other therapist that I have, that's what we do, is it's more of a somatic touch work, and that goes off after the childhood stuff that doesn't come with a lot of like images or thoughts, or sometimes it's just pure sensation. And so that has been something that I've added in the last couple of months, and that's huge. It's taking everything that I've learned in the course and applying it to a situation and or to a therapy session, but with a guide. Like one thing that she was telling me, where there's a lot of rabbit holes that lead to nothing when we're doing this work, but having a guide, we can get through and process it in a different way. And I'm a big believer of that, and that's what I'd like to do eventually, going through these courses, is be able to help people. And I think it's kind of like therapy for men that don't want to do therapy. A lot of my clients are not interested in that. And it's a way to build capacity and regulate. I don't need to talk to you about a specific issue like that. I would send it to a therapist for somebody like that. But like if we build capacity and regulation in the nervous system, they work, the traumas work their way out
Yeah,
themselves.
yeah.
Yeah.
I remember you brought up a memory of two people that came and did a 24-hour retreat with me. One of those people came with a walking stick and actually had to pull herself up on the rail up my 5 steps to get into my house. She was in so much pain. And I thought, what am I going to do to help you? And I got her to lie on the bed and I just held her body because
Yeah,
I
that's
knew
what this is. Yeah.
where the pain was, and I just held her body hours, like hours. I held her body, and she did some shaking, and I can't even remember what else. But all I know is I held her body for hours in different parts, and she walked out in 24 hours with the walking stick under her arm. And she just walked out. She said there was no pain in her body at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And I
that
thought,
pain is trapped sensation.
that's
That's asking to
exactly
get out.
right. And we were able to release that. And another person who did a 24-hour, her hands were, have you ever seen people with arthritis? And
Yeah.
they're all like, she couldn't hold a cup, cutlery, drive a car. And it was in her feet as well. And I just held her hands and talked and, processed with her 24 hours. I would have held her hands and feet all up about 10 hours, but she walked out with her hands like this.
Now, when you have that much release, what kind of instructions would you give to someone afterwards? Because I have my own experiences that are interesting, but I'm curious if you have.
So I actually do give them instructions, and I kept in touch with the second lady for 2 years, and she kept her body like this.
Mm-hmm.
And I said to her, okay, so you need to scan your body with your hands. And this is something that I teach my practitioners, that if there's you're not touching like this, but you're not that far off. You're just skimming the body, right? The body will tell you where the energy's trapped or there actually isn't any energy. So if there's no energy, it's going to be cooler. And if the energy is trapped, it's going to be warmer. And so basically what you want to do is regulate your body by putting your hand on the warmer spots, and your hand will heat up. And for maybe a minute or two, and then it will become neutral. And then you are actually regulating the electrical system in your body to be neutral or in that flow position. And I just get people to check their body before they get out of bed. And they keep their body in that flow state.
And is that so for me, when I started doing some bigger releases, what would happen is I would have an amazing couple of hours, whether that was a day or less, and then I would get crushed the next day if I did not. It's almost like when we have a big release, we've got this empty space in our body that's looking to be filled. And if we can, I have so many people that I work with, but I had a buddy of mine who helped me. He would say, we need to fill that with something dense, right? And some people will say like light, but light's not dense, right? And so what he helped me with is he goes, all right, think of something like, he knew I like to go hiking. So he's like, think of like a big rock that you've been around. Think of, I use my brother and our connection, our love a lot of times too. And as soon as I'm doing the therapy, there's usually like a minute of quiet, and I will go into a meditation and just feel that with like that thick rock. I'll see that rock, I'll feel it, I'll touch it, I'll feel the gritty, the sandy, and
Yeah.
I imagine my body going into that and then kind of spreading that out. And since I've been doing that, the like almost like the detox reaction, if you will, afterwards has been a lot better.
So that's like you're grounding. You're
That's it.
grounding
That's
into
exactly
the
what I'm
new
doing.
you. Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm doing.
Yeah.
It's funny because I asked, he said that he's like, you got to ground. And I'm big into the circadian biology and grounding and light and all that stuff. And I'm like, you mean like bare feet on the ground? He's like, kinda, he's like, you got to calm yourself down by doing this meditation. And it
Yeah.
really helped. I mean, I showed up because I had this big release. I was mourning. I was talking about being sick earlier. That's what happened. It's right when that happened. So I'm mourning for like a week or two, and I was going to see him. He's like, "What are we going to work on?" And I'm like, "Dude, I am fucked up. Like I did this massive release. I'm a little bit nervous to even come in and work with you."
Yeah.
And that's what we worked on, was just grounding.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's interesting that you use the rock. One of the things that I use is waterfall and water, because water has no obstacles. So if you're water and there's a big rock in the middle of the stream, the water goes around it. Or if the water's high enough, it'll go over it. If there's rocks underneath it, it'll go under it. Like water, there's no obstacles. And even if there's a dam wall, it will just build up until it can go over it. And so I find that I use water a lot. What else do I do? I guess what
Salt
I
baths.
do.
You ever done salt baths for that too? I've had energy workers and recommend salt bath, specifically like sea salt, not necessarily magnesium. It's the sea salt to help detox the cells.
Right.
Yeah.
I remember when I was helping someone who had cancer, and she had lung cancer and needed a lung drain. And because I was so connected with her, she asked if I could go into the procedure with her. The doctor and nurse were not real keen on it, and she said, if she can't come, I'm not doing it. And so they let me go in. And what I did was I held my hands on her body as she was having the lung drain. And because of the state that she was in, I was her voice. Like I could say, okay, you have to turn it off now and just let her adjust to this. And then I could tell from my body that they could turn it back on. So I think they took like 1.5 liters off her lung. It was massive. But in that process, I actually felt the roof, the walls, everything come down, because I was so connected to her that I almost blacked out. And I didn't know what I was doing. Like, this was 30 years ago. I did not know, not 25 years ago. I didn't know what I was doing. I just knew that if I put my hands on her, that I could help her regulate the fluid coming off. It was all intuitive. And she was a psychotherapist. And when we got home, she said, Julie, don't you ever do that again. And I said, what did I do? She said, you completely left your body and blended with mine. And she said,
is that what you call that?
I don't know. She said, you have to get in a bath now, and you have to stay there for at least half an hour, and you can't do any work, anything. You're not to do anything for me for 24 hours. You've got to get back in your body. And I think she told me to put salt in the water.
Yeah.
And so I stayed in the water. So the water was bringing me back into my body. It was almost like returning to the womb.
Oh yeah.
and coming back into my body.
I've heard other intuitives say similar, have similar experiences.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I try not to do that. Sometimes
Yeah.
it happens, but I, with knowledge, you have awareness and,
Yep.
but yeah, that was, look, I think I had low blood sugar, but she said, no, you did something else. And she,
Oh, you could feel it. You could feel, I don't want to say disassociation, but the disconnection. You could feel that. And you thought it was low blood sugar. Is that what you're saying?
yeah, 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 yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah, we can
And,
create any kind of story if from instead, because that's good to have that feedback from her.
oh, absolutely. And look, they gave me a barley sugar and I was okay. So the sugar did the trick, but it was more that I could actually feel the fluid draining out of her, but I could feel myself draining out of my body as well.
Oh, yeah, that makes
Does,
sense.
does that make sense?
Yeah,
It
yeah.
was it was I was the fluid in her lung,
Mm,
and I could feel it draining. So I think that was what I shouldn't have been doing.
mm. Well,
And
that's why we learn.
that's why we learn. And sometimes
Hmm.
we well, I learned from making mistakes. I learned
Yeah,
from
same. You
experiencing.
and me both, sister.
Yeah. And
That's
so
what makes me a good health coach is
yeah.
I have done so many things wrong too
Mhm.
aggressively. Typically, that's my MO. I'm very sensitive,
Yeah.
and in the past, I pushed myself so hard, and those hard lessons you don't forget them. And so
No.
when I'm working with clients, I think your typical health coach is going to be like, go hard, go, restrictive diets, punishing workouts. And I'm always on the side of caution. I love that stuff as well, but I'm going to typically hold people back instead of push them.
Yeah, yeah. And so what else, how else did your inner journey unfold because like, are you still experiencing Lyme or do you feel like
Oh, no, no.
so the
No,
Lyme is,
that was years ago. Like, so the first round of stuff that I dealt with was traumatic brain injury,
yeah,
developed autoimmune, started
yeah.
having panic attacks, insomnia. They gave me medication. I went on my way for a couple of years.
Mm.
Then I moved into the house with black mold and developed Lyme disease from being in that environment. So Lyme
Oh,
is a opportunistic pathogen in that environment where my immune system suppressed. Lyme came out. That's the way it was explained to me.
yeah, yeah.
And had heavy metals at that time. Had metabolic issues. Like I don't know if it was full blown diabetes, but it was pre-diabetic.
Mm.
And so I reversed all of that stuff kind of at the one time for a couple of years. And you know, that's when I became a health coach. I started working with people.
Mm.
That was 10, 12 years ago. And
Yeah.
then, then I got in the car accident and got the long haul COVID 3 times. And that was 5 years ago. That was harder than anything else.
Mm.
That's where, I was on a podcast yesterday and they asked me if I've ever been through like a dark night of the soul. I'm like, yeah, many of those, man.
Many. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's like, now, and I'm still coming out of that, I mean, I didn't exercise for 4 years. I, uh, I mean, I was just healing. Even this last year, I took off from my business for the most part, and really just worked on the trauma because
Mm.
when we start healing that stuff, more comes out.
Oh,
You know,
that's exactly right. I'm so
and I had
glad you
so much
said that.
anxiety I couldn't function.
Yeah, because you just don't bring off one layer. Like
Hmm.
there's layers and layers.
Hmm.
And the way that a healing journey was explained to me is that you actually have to unwind back through the layers.
Mm-hmm.
And so whatever
you have to feel what hasn't what wanted to express when you suppressed it. So you got to go through it and feel it.
Yeah.
And that's not easy. That's like it's hard.
Yeah.
And it feels like you're going backwards when it happens.
Exactly.
So that's scary.
Yeah.
But you can't be afraid of it.
That's right.
You almost have to love it. You have to accept it. And that's what I try to, that's one thing I've been working on here recently is meeting, we treat ourselves like we got taught growing up, and so whenever I would have symptoms, I would be really hard on myself. And I still am hard on myself sometimes. I'm learning different, I'm learning that you can't hate and shame that you have to
because it's
love and accept it.
Yeah.
And meet it with compassion. That's what trauma is, I think, is just a separation of self. And so it's almost like those little versions of us that are asking to be healed. We have pushed them away and shoved them down, and for so long.
Well,
that
that's
I get to unpack that.
Totally pushed down everything that it's. My mum's passed now, so I'll tell this story. My dad said to me, Julie, your mum used to lock you in the bathroom. So obviously I was having a temper tantrum. Your mum used to lock you in the bathroom and you would be screaming, and I'd walk past and I'd think, oh, are you doing the right thing there? And so, but he didn't interfere with the way that our mum parented us. And that kind of stuck with me. I don't have memories of being locked in the bathroom. But what I do remember is that I learned if I said nothing, I didn't get in trouble.
Yeah, so we learned to shut down.
Yeah, but my sister, she did not, she just kept going, and she did not shut down. And my sister always got more smacks. I think we got smacked because we fought. My sister and I fought, and Mum couldn't stand us screaming at each other. It wasn't that we were being naughty. Mum didn't like the noise. But my sister always got more smacks. She gave us one each, and I would just be quiet. But my sister would say, get your filthy hands off me, you leave me alone. Like, she would really, and so she just kept getting smacked. And I think that I learned to shut down early so that I didn't get in trouble.
Oh yeah, I mean there's a really fantastic book that helped me a lot. It's called Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents. And what you learn in that book is that our caregivers, when they haven't healed their trauma and they're dysregulated, and we have big emotions and they're not able to be with their emotions, so they're gonna punish and shame for the kid that has emotion instead of comforting them and giving them what they need. And so those coping mechanisms that we learn as a result of that is what gets stored in the body, and is the trauma that we get to unpack years later.
Yeah, well, that's why I had 6 major surgeries, because I just kept pushing everything down and rotting my body, like making it really, really toxic. And
Looking back, like my therapist and I were having a conversation, I don't know when, but I was like, it's hard. Well, the childhood stuff is tough, like my family loved me and they took care of me and provided for me, but there was just things that I didn't get emotionally that I needed. Right. And so when I came to therapy and I had this laundry list of chronic health stuff, I was reading the book, The Body Keeps the Score, and I skipped past the childhood trauma stuff because I was like, who am I to say that my childhood was bad? But that's the generational it's stuff that gets handed down from family to family. And I asked her, I said, when I walked in here, did you know that the source of my trauma or my illness, my experiences with illness was went back to that, had roots in that? And she was like, yeah, it didn't really make sense to me. I didn't know that. I didn't say like, hey, this is a kid that dealt with X, Y, and Z. It was, yeah, your story didn't make sense. And now, what I think is when we have dysregulation coming out of childhood, and we may or may not be aware of that. I was a nervous kid. I also would say I was very thankful that I had sports to be able to get that aggression out. Yep. And so with a dysregulated nervous system, when we have a shock trauma later, a big injury, an illness, a death, whatever that may be, the person with the regulated nervous system can walk away from that car accident and be fine. And the person that has the dysregulated nervous system, now their gut's off, their hormones are off, they can't get out of bed, they can't drive anymore. And we say, what's wrong with me? And then what happens is you get slapped with a diagnosis that they give you a medication to completely suppress that. Yeah. Instead of addressing it and feeling through that, I had no idea. I didn't understand anything about mental health. I thought it was weak. I thought, you don't do that.
That's really interesting that you're talking about if there's an accident, a regulated person can walk away. And a dysregulated nervous system, you have a whole bunch of things happening. I also believe that we have our physical body, but we have 6 other subtle bodies. And I call our mental, emotional, spiritual, they're subtle bodies. Like they're not something that you can pick up and observe, but they're part of us. And so we have physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, auric, energy, etheric. They're the 7 bodies that I work with. And what I believe is that trauma gets trapped in those bodies as well. And if we don't address it, it gets denser and denser and denser until it's part of our physical experience, not just our subtle experience. And so I haven't heard the story or the relationship between a dysregulated nervous system and a regulated nervous system in an accident situation. But I've observed how some people can walk away from a horrific crash with nothing wrong, and other people, it's not a horrific crash and they die. Like there's no, like, what's happening, and it has to be something within their 7 bodies that allows that.
And I think for me, I remember, I should have died 10 times, and I remember going to you should have seen this car. This car was crunched in, my dog was in there, killed my dog. Completely. The only place in that car that was left was my spot. Like I got hit by a dump truck carrying a load going 45 miles an hour. Right. And so, it's kind of like looking back at it now, the only way that I could think about it is, I remember going to the junkyard the next day and seeing the guy that owned it. He said, whose car is this? And I was like, it was mine. And he just broke down and started crying. It's making me emotional now. And it's like it's like this journey's been the greatest thing that ever happened to me. It's not been easy, but it was like the universe saying, like, you gotta wake up, like you gotta do this work. And I think that trauma, it travels through generations and families until somebody's ready to feel it.
I agree. And it's in the DNA. Yeah. It actually gets passed on through DNA. And as I'm listening to your story, I'm getting this image of this bright white light encapsulating you in that accident, and it's like a force field shield protecting your physical being from the impact of that. That's the vision that I'm seeing. And then I'm hearing, it's almost like, you got work to do, boy. And I'm hearing this voice, because I don't talk like that, and it's like pointing finger, and it's like I've got goosebumps, and it's like I'm tapped into, Mitch, your work. It's time. That's the message that I'm getting. It's time for the world to receive the okay. All right, I'm going to say the word. The message that you have to share with the world, now is the time. And that's, I hope that doing these podcasts, you're getting the opportunity to share that message, that it's now time for men to do the inner work as well. Like women have been doing it for a long time. It's now time for men to do that work. And I think, oh my God, I'm channeling here. We're at the apex of men regulating their nervous systems. And that is actually what's going to change the narrative of the dynamics of men and women in the world.
That's hilarious, because I love that. Thank you for sharing that. That means a lot. It definitely hit me. That's what I wrote my application for my mentorship about.
Oh,
and I didn't
validation for you. Yeah.
Oh yeah. And using my brother as a catalyst.
Yeah.
I haven't, my friends, I just started talking about that. I didn't know how to talk about it. I didn't even know that I wasn't talking about it. I haven't agreed to process that. And, I want to, seeing him suffer and see what he went through. He didn't feel like he had any options. He didn't feel like there's anything that he could do, and I felt that way. And I went through everything, functional medicine, all these things helped me, nutrition, exercise, diet. I mean, everything you can imagine, and everything helped a little bit and equipped me with knowledge. But it's still, I started understanding, doing the spiritual work, the mental, emotional work. That's when things started to get better. And men, when you start to talk to them about that, a lot of them just clam up. Now me, I'm vulnerable and open, and I love this stuff. But for guys, they shut down. And so I'm trying to figure out how to share that. And I think I've got a couple clues. I think men, we have to do it for someone else a lot of times. Like we like to be providers and help others. And so sometimes for some men, it's hard to do for themselves. And so we can do it for your wife, do it for your family, do it for your friends. And then also, like me, kind of like that system that I created for doing the work, we've got to have really clear objectives. With women, they can be more ambiguous and more, I guess ambiguous is the word. But guys, we gotta, it's gotta be, this is the outcome we're looking for. This is how it worked. And I'm open to any other suggestions that people have. I'm again, just starting this journey and just starting to share. So
do you know what? And I don't know about human design like my daughter knows about human design, but learning about human design has actually probably been one of the biggest influences in the way that I communicate, A, with my clients, B, with myself, C, with my family, that understanding my human design and what makes me who I am and how I need to interact in the world has made a really big difference. And in human design, there's reflectors, which are very rare. there's projectors, which half of my family are projectors. So projectors actually wait to be invited. Then there's generators, which is the most common. I'm a generator. There's manifesting generator. We kind of work together. So my daughter's a manifesting generator. And then there's manifestors. Now, all of those human designs, they interact with the world differently. And the clock's going off. So when I hear the clock go, like we've got a clock that goes off every hour on the hour, but I don't hear it every hour on the hour. And when I hear a clock or a siren or something, it's like, okay, what are you thinking? What are you talking about? It's important. And so this is important, the human design. And so for the people in my family that are projectors, I can't wait for them to invite me to do stuff. I have to kind of say, oh, would you like to do? Or what do you think of doing XYZ? Rather than me waiting for them to ask me what I think, because it's not going to happen. Because projectors, that's the way that project personality works. For a manifester, they can have an idea. It can like drop out of the sky, come into their head, and they can go, oh, I'll just build that and run with it. But for a projector or a reflector or a generator, if they do that, it doesn't work. It doesn't go anywhere. There's missing steps or there's missing pieces in the construct of that. So when we started looking at human design, we discovered that if we communicate in a way that works for the human design, and sometimes that structure that you're talking about for men, they don't need all the structure, but other people do need the structure. And it might be interesting for you to have a look at that. But
I would love to talk to your daughter because I've done human design in the past. I think that we messed it up and had a miscommunication, and we couldn't figure out if I was a manifesting generator or a generator. And then the message was a little weird. I know this girl was just getting started, and I've heard so many references to human design over the years, and the person that I know that could help me with that has had some stuff going on, so I haven't been able to do that. So you have to hook me up so I can get into that. I'd like to check that out.
We pay the monthly subscription to delve a little bit deeper into it. So I'll get your details when we finish and get Tash to have a look. And we can organize something. But it does make a difference. We really, when we work coaching with someone, we always do their human design because that helps us how we communicate. And look, there's arrows in human design. I don't understand the arrows. Tash does. But just by looking at the arrows on the human design chart, she can tell whether people need structure or they're more fluid.
I'm more, I guess I'm both.
Well, I have 2 arrows going that way and 2 arrows going that way. So, or I might have 3, I don't know. But it's interesting. It's really interesting to understand more about yourself.
Well, that's what this whole work is. That's what I've been trying to understand for 20 years of doing this work is just, that's why I love talking to intuitives. I love working with people. When I'm on the table doing anything, I'm just like, oh, what do you, tell me this. And if I could, the more that I can know about myself, it's like last night I was working with a guy who, I don't know what to call him. He kind of does like subconscious stuff. And he was like, a lot of times in our body, when we are dysregulated or something's off, there's just confusion, right? And it's like that we got this blank canvas, and the more we can put some lines on it, put some color to it, pick out one thing at a time, it tends to calm the system down a little bit more.
Yeah.
So it's the more that we can learn about ourselves, that's what life is learning why do we come here? What's our soul contract? How do we
why am I even still alive, right?
Yeah, that's me, man. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Look, I remember earlier in the year, back in late January, early February, we had big plans, and we wanted to come to the US for a conference, the energy psychology conference. We were talking about having a table there. We were talking about being a sponsor. And then we went, oh, well, if we're coming to Arizona, we should go up to Sedona and run a retreat in Sedona. And like, we were they're all exciting things, like just stacking all these things on that were our plans. And I just started shaking, like the adrenaline wouldn't stop. And I was right on the edge. And when I start thinking, you know what, I can't even deal, I don't even want to be here. When I start getting those thoughts and I've got the adrenaline rushing through my body and I feel like I'm wild-eyed. It doesn't happen very often. But I just went, I can't do this. It was complete overwhelm of my nervous system. And so I rang Tash and said, oh, I'm not doing too good. For me to actually do that, that's a big breakthrough. For me to actually say I'm not doing okay. And she just said, okay, well, just talk to me. What's going on? And she has this really calm voice. And she said, oh, we'll just take that off the table. We don't have to do that this year. And we'll take that off the table. So she took everything back off the table and my nervous system regulated.
I got something for that. I heard someone say this. They said our business only grows as much as our nervous system is ready to grow.
100%. Yeah.
Allows, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you could apply that to anything, our work, our whatever.
And, back in 1994 and 1996, I was on a TV show called The Extraordinary. And like it sold to 22 countries around the world. And I was in the phone book. And it was before the internet took off. And I got letters, like sacks of letters and phone calls from all around the world. You're my last hope. You've got to help me. All that, like, if you can imagine thousands and thousands of that. And
that sounds overwhelming.
It was completely overwhelming. And it took me 3 years to work my way through all the letters and help those people.
Wow.
And so I actually went out of the phone book. No one could find me. I was off. I wasn't on the internet. And then in 2004, I went through cancer and, I didn't even know if I was going to live. And I had surgery and then I lost my voice for a year. And I remember saying, after I found out that only 5% of my left vocal cord was working, the doctor saying, you may never talk again. And so I went home and I lay in bed and I said, God, if you give me back my voice, I promise I will share what I've learned. And so I started speech therapy and I did the work. See, you can go to a therapist and they can be an hour with you and they can tell you what to do. But if you don't go home and do the homework, you're not going to improve for the next session, right? And they can tell that you haven't done the work. But I did the work in the car because I didn't want anyone else to hear me because it was so bad. My voice was so like a pubescent boy and their voice breaks. It was 10 times worse than that. And so I did the work, and I did the work by chanting, and I could start to sustain a note. And so where was I going with that story? I did the and then I completely lost where I was going.
Well, I can jump in because I wrote it
jump
down.
in, Mitch.
The homework thing that you said, like that's what I see in my space is health space, health coaching is, and what I did for a while is like, hey, we show up, we have a meeting once a week, and then go do this work. And I found that people weren't ready to do that work, you know. And so what I like to do is we do it on the call together, and then my clients get unlimited access to me because the magic happens in between the sessions.
Exactly.
You know, like, hey, I got this thing and I need you to help me make this decision here. And the more we can make those decisions, we build that habit and it becomes unconscious. We go from like, what is it? Unconsciously competent to consciously competent or whatever. And that's, for me, I've gotten really good at change. And the more I work with people, I understand change is hard. But it's not hard when you've got a guide, and you know you can get lost with a map.
You need the guide.
But you need the guide,
you need
right?
The guide.
And one thing I had to learn too is, and this is another point I guess, is in our industry, in this health industry, people see things through one lens. Right. They whatever thing that helped them get to where they are. Most of us are. Had our own journey and went through something. And so whatever diet, exercise, energy work, whatever program helped them, that's the way they see the world through. And now I learned through the trauma work is that you should do this and you shouldn't do this. That would completely override this person. Right. And not address them specifically. So I get to know the person and I teach them how to listen to their body. Because ultimately I worked with everybody in the room and did everything for so long, but nothing really started working until I started listening to my impulses.
Correct.
But when we have trauma, we push that away so much. No, I don't want to do that. I want to do what other people are doing or whatever this person says. But when we can listen to ourselves, that's the thread that pulls us out of the shit.
Correct.
Right. And so who am I to say you should do it my way?
Exactly.
I want to. Here's a map, and I'm gonna put you over in the passenger seat for a little bit. Let me drive this car, show you how this thing works. And it's not that I'm spoon feed. I guess I spoon feed in the beginning, but to the point where now you tell me what you want. You tell me what's coming up for you.
You've got to lay the track for the neural pathway to grow. And you're showing them that's laying the track for the neural pathway. And then they have to actually build the neural pathway themselves. They have to do that work repetitively for it to
and the way we do anything
autonomically. Sorry?
Right. I was going to say, in the way we do, once you learn that system, the way we do one thing, we do everything. And so like it can start, I meet people where they're at. And so I just listen. I had like the sequential order of doing things. First, we're going to work on your mindset and set your goals. And then we're going to do nutrition. And then it's not like that. It's like, I'm going to listen to what's going on. What's your problem? How long has it been going on? What have you tried? What's worked? What hasn't? You know, why are you here? And then through that conversation, that period of rapport building, you want to work on nutrition first. You want to build an exercise program. And so that's our entry point. The easiest thing to do is where we start. And then from that rapport, they start in learning how to, listen to their body, which is as simple as feeling, like Irene talks about this, orienting, feeling your butt in the chair, like literally being present, then following your impulse. What do you want to do? Tell me what to do. Tell me what to do. What should I eat? And it's like, I don't know. What do you want to eat? And then that builds but that builds that connection so that the deeper we go with these layers of health, we're going more into, like, you can get the perfect workout program or the perfect nutrition plan, and you can execute that until you don't. And then that's what I'm interested in, is why aren't you doing this thing that's going to create this freedom? Well, maybe it doesn't work for you, but you got to figure out what your body wants, and we can start listening to that. Don't listen to me. I'm just the guide. I'm not trying to tell you what to do anymore. I'm trying to help you listen, so that when you do that, that's how we heal.
Yeah, I really, really love that. And you know what? I think that we need to wrap up this incredible conversation. And any last words?
No, I mean, I think to the listeners, you know, my message is you can heal yourself.
Yeah,
You don't need anybody.
right there
You
with
know,
you.
there's amazing guides, and we heal in community. But ultimately, you know, we look for a quick fix or a pill or whatever. You know, the healing comes from within.
It does. And that's what I call insourcing. The insourcing, you can outsource a little bit to get the guidance, but you actually have to do the work yourself, the inner work. And it's a journey. It really is a journey of self-understanding.
Yeah. And I thought I had to do it all on my own. That was part of my trauma. And I'm learning, just like you learned, you know, to ask for help, to raise your hand and say, I'm not in a good place. I need help. And there's so many people out there that can do that. And you know, if I can be a resource for anyone that's listening, they can find me at mitchwebb.com on my website, or Instagram at kmitchwebb. And I may not be the right person, but I'll do what I can and help connect you with that person, or help if I can.
And we'll put all your details in the description. And Mitch, thank you so much for joining me. It's been a really great chat.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for tuning into this incredible episode of Let's Chat with Julie Lewin and our special guest, Mitch Webb. We explored some extraordinary things in this episode, as you will have listened to. We uncovered how Mitch works with the somatic experience to release trauma. I even channeled a message for him that after we finished the episode, he said, I needed to hear that. So I hope this was meaningful for you. I hope that you found something for your own life and journey that we shared in this podcast. And if you enjoyed the episode, like and follow our podcast wherever you listen, so it can get into the hands of those who need it most. Also, your insights shape the direction that we take this podcast. So please let us know if there's anyone that you think that we should interview or have a chat with, or let us know some topics that are of interest to you, because we'll make that happen. And thank you again for listening. And remember, the journey to self-discovery and growth is an ongoing process, and it continues beyond the airwaves. Until next time, may you find courage, peace, and magic on your own unique path. See you next time. Bye.